Welcome back. Let's talk about emulator testing versus real device testing. So, being a mobile tester and staying in a mobile testing environment or lab, and you may have few devices already in your hand, and you may be also having personal phones, which is probably Android, iPhone or Windows phone. And in the beginning of any product or project, you will not really get test hardwares or every other hardware out there in the market. And OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, releasing mobile phones time and again. And there is always a mobile phone getting released, and it's thousands of devices. Is it possible to test in every other device out there in the market? No. You will not really be able to do that. But in a testing environment, what is really suitable? Is it okay to test in emulators and then send the product to the market? Or do I have to test it in emulator and as well as phone? Or is that only phone I'm going to use for testing? Being a mobile tester, I'm not really using emulators for testing. This is as clear as a crystal, I'm going to tell you, because emulator have different capabilities, and that certain scenarios that you may not really be able to simulate what is happening in a device. It's just a stopgap for testing. And when you are doing testing, when you got the build and you don't have the device, any device in your hand, you can use emulators. In the very beginning of the project or product, you can use emulators to test screen navigations, features and functionalities, buttons, button sizes, color, images, icons. And if it's a complete web application, you may not really face problems like memory and all that, because certain BlackBerry phones, more than 200 KB images, it will be very difficult to even download that and display certain times. So if you don't have the device, you should really use emulators. And if you have a device, you should really plan your testing in a real device, because real device have accelerometer. It need a chip and gyroscope and GPS and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and you need to insert a SIM card. None of them can be achieved in an emulator. This is an iPhone emulator. Yes, indeed it looks like the same, the way an real device look. It's fine. This is an Android emulator in front of me. Every other app I can install and play in this. I can check screen navigations. I can check button sizes. I can check features and functionalities available in there. If I have the SDK, I can pull out an emulator very quickly. I can create an Android virtual device you may be already seen or know at this point in time. So, planning your test exactly only in the emulator, if you are having an app that reaches millions, is not advisable. It's not advisable at this point in time. But is emulators untouchable? No. You can perform as many number of possible scenarios in an emulator itself. But features that uses gyroscope, features that use GPS, Wi-Fi SIM card, you may not be able to really do that. Maybe you need to do some field testing, and you cannot carry an emulator in a lift and perform a field testing. You're supposed to have a device. The other things are like in a device, you need to charge it, you need to insert a SIM card in order to work, you need to connect with the Wi-Fi access point, which is not really required. This is a great advantage in an emulator. And do you really need every time a device to test? No. So you can use emulators for sometimes to test, and some test automations can be planned in the emulator itself. Certain times connecting a device using emulators, using the real devices may be a problem, but you can plan automations, unit testing with emulators itself. There are good content available in the internet about emulators and devices. What is the real differences between them? But my advice as a mobile tester myself is use the device as much as possible and do not entertain testing in an emulator. Emulator may have a lot of memory, and because it takes your PC memory or a Mac memory, but in a real device it's limited amount of memory, and there will be a memory leak that will pop up and crash the device or crash that app, which may never happen in an emulator. So with that, I'll end this particular little session about emulator as devices, and I hope this is useful. Thank you, and I'll see you in another session.